Hey, everybody, welcome to the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast. I'm your host, Keith, and with me this week is a man who is an educator, he is a musician, he is a producer, he's a fellow member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, Mr. Kyle Tippetts, who also goes by M31. Kyle, welcome to the show, man. It's good having you.
Thank you. I'm really excited to be here and to talk with you. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, awesome. So, I was listening to your latest album before we got on here, and there's a really like I listen to a lot of electronic music. I also listen to a lot of rock music. I listen to a lot of different kinds of music. It seems like you have a really good sense of song structure, which in a lot of cases with electronic music, there's not that. It's more of like an experience, but with you, I feel like you could almost hear a chorus and a verse type of situation. Is that something that you consciously do, or
Yeah,
is that just come naturally, or?
well, that's a good question. So, my musical background, when I was in high school and a little bit in college, I was in the bands and orchestras. And so song structure, by playing in the orchestra, playing in the band, and when I say band, I was in, a full band, like I played the trombone. But I was also in like jazz bands and things like that. So where there was a little bit more song structure. And so I think that that's kind of been trained on it a little bit just through playing and
Sure.
performing that way. And so I do kind of approach the music that I write kind of in that respect, kind of that song, the verse, chorus, bridgey thing, that sort of thing as well. I most of the music I listen to right now is electronic music, and you're right. There is it's more of atmospheric. There's kind of an experience there, and I feel like I try to do that, but within the not confines, but within the structure of that traditional song structure. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that was I just kind of jumped right in with that. As I was asking the question, I was like, maybe we could have asked this later, but it was what was on my mind because I had just been listening to the album. So, I'm glad you touched a little bit on how you started out though in the band and things like that in school. So, moving from jazz and from a band setting into the electronic realm of music, how did that happen?
Yeah. So when I was in high school, some of the music that I listened to that really caught my attention. First of all, I started out with classical music. My grandmother had this big set of 45s with a bunch of different classical music on it, and so really, up until I was about 13 or 14 years old, that's really all I listened to was classical music. And then I had an experience actually at a dentist office where I was getting a cavity done and they put the headphones on and I listened to music that I'd never heard before. It kind of had this classical feel to it, but there was a lot of electronic, there was a lot of synthesizers, there was a drum kit, there was bass guitar. It was Mannheim Steamroller, as I came to find out. And I just loved what I heard, right?
Yeah,
And since I also play the piano, I fell in love with that because, synthesizers, keyboards, that sort of thing. So I really
yeah,
started to listen to that music and really wanted to play that kind of music. And so, with a bunch of friends, we formed a kind of a cover band for Mannheim Steamroller that we played assemblies at our high school. We had people ask us to perform. We played in the county fair talent competition, won at the county fair, went to the state fair. And then from that, we didn't win the state fair, but from that we got a request to play on a radio station in Evanston, Wyoming, of all things,
wow,
right?
okay,
So that was really fun, but that's kind of where I kind of gravitated toward electronic music. And when I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my life, um, in the back of my mind always has been, I really want to do music. I want to write music. I want to perform it. I want to play it. And so even in college, I took a semester of music theory, ear training, that sort of thing. But then, life comes along and you kind of put some of those things on the back burner. And
yeah,
that's kind of what I did, but always listened to, I listened to all sorts of music as well, but I really gravitate towards electronic music, electronica. And so when I realized that, the computers nowadays had the power for me to be able to compose in the box, right?
Right.
And mix and master and all of that. I'm like, okay, I have to try this. I have to see what I can do because I've got all these ideas that I want to try to put into music to communicate through music. And that's kind of how I got started with that. And electronic music, just I love traditional analog instruments, right? I love,
Mhm.
but electronic music adds another, I feel like it kind of adds another layer to all of that and kind of really kind of brings, I don't know, some of those atmospheric was a word that you used a little bit
Yeah.
earlier. Kind of just allows, I feel like it allows me to kind of set the tone in the atmosphere of kind of what's in my head. And so
Yeah.
that's why I've kind of gravitated towards that. And that's kind of what that's what I really like to produce. Yeah.
Awesome. And you've produced works based on a book by my favorite author, Douglas Adams. Yeah, I love the Hitchhiker's Guide books. I love Dirk Gently. I'm a pretty big Douglas Adams fan. So what was it that gave you the idea to do that? And
Yeah.
talk a little bit about the project. Yeah.
Yeah, that was really fun. So I've always been a science fiction and fantasy movie and book aficionado. I'm a geek. I love that
Sure.
kind of
Hey,
stuff.
me too.
And so I read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when I was in high school. Actually, I think I was in junior high when I read it, and just found it to be absolutely hilarious. And so it's always kind of been in my radar. But for that project, actually, what started that project out is I was sitting down watching um, the uh, I don't know what you call it, the resurgence of Doctor Who, like
Sure.
maybe 15 years ago, right?
Yeah.
With David Tennant. I was sitting there watching that and listening to the theme,
Mhm.
and and uh, I like Doctor Who. I used to watch Doctor number 4 was the first one that I really started to watch.
Okay.
And then when I noticed it, all of a sudden it was on our local public television channel, resurgence of it, right? I'm like, wow,
Yeah.
this is
Yeah.
cool. Started watching that. And I thought, I love that theme song. I'm gonna see if I can remix that. So I started remixing that, and then the idea came to me. You know what? What I could do is I could do some EPs. I could
Mhm.
do 3 or 4 songs about Doctor Who, and then what else would I do? I would do Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Um, and another favorite science fiction show of mine is a British comedy called Red Dwarf.
Okay. Sure.
And I don't know if you've heard of that,
I
but it
have.
is
Yeah. I
absolutely
don't know if I've ever watched it, but I remember it being on like when I would
yeah,
watch Doctor Who and whatnot when I was a kid. Yeah.
yeah. And so I decided I'm going to kind of do a musical project that kind of focuses on some of the science fiction that I like. And so I
Okay.
started with Doctor Who, and then I wrote 3 or 4 songs for that. And then I did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy and wrote 3 or 4 songs for that. I've also written, I think I've got 5 songs for Red Dwarf. I just haven't released them yet. In fact, I'm planning on trying to release those this year. And then I've got others. Obviously, Star Trek has a big, I mean, I love Star Trek.
Yeah.
Star Wars, obviously, I got a Darth Vader helmet right there
Mhm.
behind me.
Yeah.
So a lot of those are still kind of on my roadmap for this particular
Okay.
project. And they just, as ideas come, I kind of put them down. And then when I feel like I've got enough material, then I put it together and release it. But yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, just really enjoyed that particular project. And as I was writing the music, I reread that entire series
Awesome.
uh, to make sure that I had all of the ideas and all the feels and everything with that. So that's kind of how that project kind of came into being and was really a blast to do.
Sure. What did you think about the Ethan Colfer book?
I don't think I've read that one.
Okay, he wrote a sixth Hitchhiker's book based on Douglas Adams' ideas.
Really?
Um,
I
yeah,
need to
so
read that.
it's actually the conclusion of the series. Douglas Adams had been working on a final book before he died, so Ethan Colfer took the stuff that he had already written and then expanded on it and finished the book, with the blessing of his family and whatnot. So it's
Okay.
official. Um,
Yeah. I need
yeah,
to
you should
read
check
that.
it out.
Yeah, I was not aware of that. That's
It's
awesome.
very much in the same style as Douglas Adams. Like you can tell, that he followed his ideas pretty closely. So I
Yeah, I'm
liked
gonna
it. I thought it was good.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely check it out though. There's been so many different editions. I remember going into a bookstore when I was a teenager and seeing this like oversized glittery edition of the Hitchhiker's Guide. Like it's just constantly coming out in different forms. I used to have uh I used to have a play on cassette. Someone had done a play of the Hitchhiker's Guide. It was just all
That
kinds of
reminded
things.
me of when I was a kid. After I read the book, our local public radio station
Hmm.
did a dramatized Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, and I remember
Yeah,
listening to it and thinking, "Oh man, this is just hilarious. Just love it."
man. Yeah, like what stuck with me was the scene where they're chasing the couch. And I'm like, how do you do that? Like, I wanted to see it. I wanted to see how they pulled it off, but it was just a
Yeah.
cassette tape.
Now,
But,
one thing I'll admit, I haven't seen the movies, right?
okay,
And there is a
they're okay.
there's a British series,
Right.
Hitchhiker to the Galaxy, that I haven't seen
Yeah.
either.
Yeah.
I don't know. I should, because I like Martin Freeman. I know he's in it, and
Oh, yeah.
I should go watch it and see it, but I
Yeah.
just haven't done that yet. So
Yeah. I actually watched the British series back in like 2003, I think it was, or four. I rented it from the library. It was pretty faithful. Like the more modern movie isn't very faithful at all, to be completely honest, but it's fun. It's just different.
yeah, yeah,
Like,
I need to check those out. But
yeah, yeah, you should. And the Dirk Gently uh TV show that was on Hulu is it was good. It's actually not based on the books. It's like the further adventures of Dirk Gently type of thing. But I enjoyed that. It had Elijah Wood in it.
oh, okay.
So and he's pretty
Oh,
talented. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he kind of played Dirk Gently's sidekick in the unwilling sidekick, if you will. He had like agoraphobia and stuff and did not want to go outside, and he just kind of was forced to. But but yeah, it's pretty fun stuff. Um, so you mentioned Mannheim Steamroller. What other influences do you have on or have influenced you?
Yeah, good. That's a really good question. Early on, while I was in high school listening to Mannheim Steamroller, I had a friend introduce me to Jean-Michel Jarre.
Okay.
Um, and so he is a huge influence on me as far as that's concerned. And then more recently, as I've been listening to more of the mainstream, if you will, kind of EDM, kind of trance, deep house, and that sort of thing. One of the electronic groups that kind of caught my fancy was a group out of the UK called Above and Beyond. I don't know if
Okay.
you've heard of them.
I have not.
I really do like a lot of their stuff.
Okay.
And let's see. Yeah, I would say primarily Mannheim Steamroller, Jean-Michel Jarre for sure, Above and Beyond, just a lot of that. BT is another one that I
Okay. I know BT. Yeah.
listen to. Yeah, Above
Yeah.
and Beyond is awesome. You should check them out if
I
you
will
have.
for sure.
They're
Okay.
really good. Um, yeah, there's a whole host of electronic artists
Sure.
modern that I like. Nora Ampure is one that's really in the deep house genre. I really enjoy her. Um, let's see, Nora Van Elken also. She's also kind of a deep house artist. She's done some things related to Lord of the Rings, which is also
Oh,
something
cool.
I'm really interested in. She's got a song called Rohirrim
Okay.
that's really good, and a couple other things around Lord of the Rings. So, those kind of artists are what I listen to as well
Okay.
currently.
Yeah, I think when I Slowfo.
I don't think I've
Uh,
heard of them.
they're a chill out group, I suppose, from England, but I like them. But yeah, Paul Oakenfold was kind of my introduction to electronic music.
Yeah,
I actually uh, picked up a mix that he did, and I was just like, "This is really freaking cool," you know. So yeah, so then I started exploring like trance and chill out and stuff like that. And yeah, I mean, I dig it. Like I said, I like pretty much all kinds of music, and there's definitely roots in classical music with electronic music if it's done correctly, I think. Um, so, and I'm a big Tchaikovsky guy. I love Tchaikovsky. I love the tension that he creates with his music. It sounds so modern to me. Like he's basically making like 90s rock, but with classical music,
yeah.
and I love it, you know. So
He's one of the composers that I would put definitely on my top 10 list is
yeah, yeah,
Tchaikovsky. Yeah, in
yeah. It's
fact, that 45, or no, they were the LP, they were the 33s that my
yeah,
grandma gave me. One side was 1812 Overture, and I think the other side was Swan Lake, right? And I
awesome.
just would flip
Yeah,
those over. Okay, I'm done with
yeah.
1812. Listen to Swan Lake. Okay, we're done with Swan Lake. I'm gonna listen to 1812 again. Yeah, absolutely. One of my
Yeah,
favorites.
it's funny because as a classical artist back in the 1800s, he was kind of derided because he wasn't following a traditional structure. But
Yeah,
that structure ended up kind of being the formation of, like I said, like 90s rock, like the quiet, loud, and building all the tension and it just the different transitional parts that he did that not a lot of classical
yeah,
musicians, composers were doing back then. I respect him so much. He was so innovative. He was so innovative that it made people not like him. So that's pretty amazing that he stuck to it. You know what I mean? And
yeah, yeah.
kept doing what he did. So I mentioned at the top we are both members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter Day Saints, and the my belief in the restored church has given me a lot of strength. I mean, I've only been a member of the church for about 5 months, but
Awesome.
it's changed my life, like to be completely honest. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how your faith influences your art and just your day to day life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Be happy to.
Awesome.
Yeah, as I started kind of getting more into music production and wanting to put music out there, one of the things that I really want to do with my music is kind of bring a wholesomeness,
Yeah.
into the world, right? And speaking specifically of my latest release, Impossible Universe, um, I just felt like it was something that I wanted to try and communicate through the music, that this universe, this world, this thing that we're on, the journey that we're on, and all of the things that are around us in the universe, right? Just didn't happen just by chance,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
That there's a higher power, there's a greater power to that. And I mean, as you look at what's in the universe, all of the nebulas and the planets and the galaxies and everything, and think of a creator who created all of that, and then think of a creator who actually created us, right? And is intimately aware of each one of us, but yet is the creator of the universe, is kind of something that I wanted to try and bring into that. And that's kind of what I try to do with most of the music that I do, is just try to communicate that there is a God, and he's created all of this amazing, impossible, really stuff, but yet he's created us as well, and is intimately aware of and concerned about and loves each one of us as well. And so I try that's kind of what drives me, is as I want to try to, through music, try to get that message out in any way I can, really.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah. And I mean, you can feel it, you know, there were actually moments when I was listening that I could feel the spirit. So, um, at least for
Well,
me, I'm in touch. I feel like I'm in touch with the spirit more than I have been ever. So, I mean, I could feel it. So I
thank you.
appreciate that. I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
that's what I hope to do, is kind of bring that, feeling of goodness and joy and wonder, of what God has created for us,
Yeah.
in the music. And I feel like intent is a really important thing in art, right? I feel like, um, if you are in tune, if you really listen closely, you can pick up on the intent of the artist, right?
Right.
I
Sure.
think that's really critical. I think for me, art should uplift, right? I mean, art should, talk about, maybe the pressing issues of the day or whatever. But in the end, I think it uplifts, and it's part of um, you know, trying to help us understand the human experience. Um,
Sure.
and so intent is really important, to me, and I really try to make sure that um, I have my intent right when when I'm writing songs and putting things together.
Yeah. So you have 3 albums currently out, is that correct?
So I have the Doctor Who EP.
Right.
I have the Hitchhiker's Guide EP, and then I have Impossible Universe. I do have
Okay.
an album, that I released, way before that, called The Mighty Have Fallen. That's
Okay.
also out. It was my first album, and when you listen to it, you can tell that it was my
Tell
first.
us your first album. Yeah.
But it was kind of my first, it was my first start into producing and recording. Learned a lot.
Yeah.
But the subject matter is something that is close to my heart. It is kind of roughly based on, um, themes from the Book of Mormon,
Okay.
um, and
Awesome.
in an electronic format.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's kind of what I've got out.
Okay. I was going to ask, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, but what do you feel the progression is from your first work until the latest album that you released last year?
Yeah, yeah. So I feel like what I've learned a lot is in, mixing and mastering, particularly in the mixing and the sound engineering, right? I had a producer friend of mine help me with the first one, and show me, things that I needed to be aware of as I was, writing song. He helped me with my process, right? Um, and so, but I think the biggest things I learned is how to really, pay attention to, the engineering, the EQ, the compression, the balance between the instruments, making sure that there's room in the mix for, all of the different instruments, and that is an art. As
Yeah.
much as a science it might be, it is also an art, and
Yeah.
it's something that you have to really pay attention to. And so, I've kind of developed my process such that I actually write this. I get the song written, right, with all the parts, and a really rough, balance mix. And then I'll go back in and I'll just be really detailed about each instrument, based on, how I want the song to sound, the emotion that I want in the different parts of it. And then just really try to dial that in with the levels, the EQ, and so forth. And then I tried to do the mastering myself, but I've decided that is such an arcane
Yeah.
art, right?
Yeah.
I don't really try to do that anymore, unless I'm just making a demo or something like that.
Sure.
And so usually at the mastering stage, I'll actually send it off, to professionals to have them master it. But I
Okay.
think between that first album and the one that I've released, it's really the production part, the mixing, the sound engineering, that I've really feel like I've made progress on. But let me tell you, I have so much more to learn, right? That's what's exciting
Yeah.
about
Sure.
anything, right? Is like you get to a certain point, it's like then you can see how much more you need to learn.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. It's funny that you mentioned like having room in the song. It's such a it's almost unquantifiable, but when you hear a song that has space and breathes, you just know it, you know?
Yeah, yeah,
And when a song is overly compressed, you can hear that too, just as a listener. It's very interesting. Like as I've gotten more, I've been a musician, well, a singer. I've been a singer and a songwriter for most of my life. And as I've gotten a little more educated about music, uh, I'll go back and I'll listen to stuff and I'll be like, oh, this sounds over compressed. I always thought it did, and then it turns out it was. It's
Yeah.
just weird how you can just feel that and hear it. Even if you don't know anything about music. Like it's
And I go back and I listen to the songs on Impossible Universe, and it's like there's definitely room for improvement. I feel like they're pretty good. They're pretty good, but
yeah,
there's a lot to be learned, and a lot of craft to hone. And that's one of the things that really keeps me excited. I mean, I'm just excited
yeah,
about music anyway, but keeps me engaged is the learning, right?
yeah.
I just love learning new things and then applying new techniques and seeing how they work and tuning, fine tuning them and that sort of thing. So
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny because like I said, was really impressed with the structure of the songs, and I felt like um, it was the album's really relatable, like especially from an electronic standpoint, because like I said, a lot of electronic music is there for atmosphere and to create kind of an experience that you're connected with, but you're not thoroughly involved in. At least that's how I use it. But with your music, I felt like I was part of what was happening on the album. So I feel like you did an awesome job. The fact that you feel like you have room to improve, and I'm not just saying that because you're on the show. Like that's really how I felt while I was listening to it. So that's exciting
no,
that you see areas you can get better at. That's to me, that's exciting as a listener. So
thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Yeah. I listen, and the songs that I'm working on now, it's like, okay, let's apply what we've learned from the last one, right? And make it better. Yeah, you did mention on these particular songs on Impossible Universe, I was trying to tell a story,
mhm,
some sort of story in each one of those songs. And the songs that I produced videos for, I tried to, as best as I could,
yeah,
kind of tried to convey that story visually as well. And that's kind of the one of the fun one of the other things that I really like to do is I like to write creatively. I've never published anything. It's on my bucket list,
yeah, of
but
course.
I haven't published anything yet. But as I've been creating this music and releasing it, that is one of the things that is at the forefront is what's the story in the song, and I feel like the song structure of traditional you know whatever rock pop
Yeah,
music whatever kind of lends itself to that type of storytelling, and so I try to keep that in mind as I created the music for this
awesome,
album.
awesome. So you mentioned that you're working on some new stuff. Is that I mean, you just put this album out not that long ago, your latest album. So is that something that we can look forward to hearing soon, or what's the idea behind the new music?
So, what I'm, I yeah, I'll tell you what I got, what I kind of have planned out. So, I mentioned earlier on with the science fiction project, the Red Dwarf kind of EP, kind of a send up of Red Dwarf. I released one of those songs in 2020 as a single, um, but I'm going to release the rest of those
Awesome.
this year as an EP, including that particular single. And then the longer term project that I'm working on is some of the electronic music that I've recently been getting into is kind of the really atmospheric, kind of what I call cosmic mindfulness,
Sure.
really ambient music where it's you could use it for meditation, you could use it for something like that. Um, and so I'm starting to put together kind of my take on well, the album will be called Cosmic Mindfulness.
Okay.
And I've started on a couple of the different tracks for that, and it'll be a little bit while. I probably won't be out this year, but that's the other major project that I'm working on this year as well.
Okay. So I've noticed as we're talking, like it's you have a theme going into pretty much every project that you're working on or that you've worked on in the past. is it, do you come up with the theme and the idea first, or do you start making music and then go, hey, this is leading me into this? Like, how does that process work?
That's a good question. So with Impossible Universe, um, it kind of started out there. There's a an organization, I can't remember what they're called, but they do a thing called the RPM Challenge. I don't know if you've heard of it.
I was reading that. I actually was reading it on your website. So
Yeah. So
yeah,
I started doing that, and for one of the RPM challenges, I was like, okay, I want to do this because it really is motivating to write and sit down every day and produce, right? I was like,
yeah,
well, what would I write about? And because an astronomy geek, and a science fiction geek,
yeah.
um, I decided, I'm gonna do something that has to do with astronomy, with
Okay,
my artist name is M31, which
right,
is the Andromeda Galaxy. And
right.
so I'm like, well, I should probably, write a song about M31, and kind of that sort of thing. And so I did kind of pick a theme, and
Mhm.
kind of go with that. And then as I wrote the songs, just more ideas for more songs came, and it's like, okay, this is a project. We're gonna write these songs, and then we're gonna see what we can do with them. So yeah, that's kind of how that happened with the EPs. Like I said, I was sitting down watching Doctor Who, and I'm like, I should remix that
Yeah,
theme. And then once
yeah,
I got the theme remixed, I'm like, I could write a couple other songs about Doctor Who things, like, the Time Lord, or, Doctor and Master, or, something like that. And then as I started doing that, it's like, I could do some other science fiction-y things, so that's
yeah,
it kind of starts with one thing, and then it goes, this is what I
yeah.
can, that sort of thing.
I've kind of dropped off on the modern Doctor Who, but I should start watching it again. Honestly, I was such a big fan of Matt Smith that when
And then
he,
Matt Smith's, yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
when Matt Smith to me had so much heart. The way that he portrayed the Doctor was so, I didn't feel like anyone could top it. And so after he stopped playing the role, I tried to continue watching it, but I was just like, it's just not the same.
You know
And
what?
yeah,
That's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that's actually the way I felt. It's like
yeah,
after Matt Smith, I mean, so when they switched from David Tennant to Matt Smith, I'm like, oh, this is going to be tough. Let's see how they
oh,
do.
yeah,
They
but
did really well, right? And so after
yeah,
watching all the Matt Smith episodes and then David Capaldi, I'm like, I like David Capaldi, and I
right,
watched it. I'm like, it's just different.
yeah,
So yeah, I
yeah,
haven't either. But for me, it's David Tennant and
mhm,
Matt Smith is
yeah,
really, yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
Definitely. I loved how David Tennant was kind of snarky and like manic, but Matt Smith, like I said, to me, he just, I don't know how you could meet that doctor and not follow him because he just seemed to care so much, and it's just like,
Yeah. And I
yeah,
really thought that the writing in the David Tennant episodes and the Matt Smith episodes was I just absolutely fantastic.
yeah, for sure. And
Every every story was just awesome.
yeah, and with such a long history and such an interesting, like, they become a new character, but they're still the same character. Like, to
Yeah.
be able to write that in a way that makes sense to people and is still compelling, that's a skill. That's like that's
Yeah.
beyond me. So yeah, I agree. Like, I completely agree. Um, so before we wrap things up, I just want to ask you if there's anything that you want to talk about, and then let people know where they can find you, find your work, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Again, I really appreciate the opportunity to have a chat. It's been really great.
Yeah,
Yeah, you can check music out. M31, like on all of the major streaming platforms. It has my face. That's how you'll know it's M31, because there are a couple other artists out there that use that
yeah,
artist name. Um, you can check out my website. It's got all this stuff on it, m31.co. And yeah, just really enjoy kind of. writing music and in the electronic space and in the science fiction space kind of kind of category is it's just been really, really fun and rewarding.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Kyle M31, I appreciate you joining us. This has been a really fun talk. It's cool to talk to someone with shared interests, and I appreciate you coming on. As always, I have to thank Emmy Studios, Tyler Martin. Um, this is the same thing I say every episode, but I could not do this without him, legitimately. And he was my guest last week, and that episode is not getting a lot of attention. So, man, give Tyler some love. Check out the episode last week where Tyler was the guest. And I just want to thank everybody who listens. I want to thank everybody who's helping us continue to grow and continue to reach new people. And I'd like to thank the old fans who stick around. We just passed our 30th episode, and that's a huge deal for a small podcast like ours. So thank you so much for the support, and we will see you next week on the Most Excellent Entertainment Podcast.